we are back at it. Another great discussion to be had. Another very special guest on policy and culture, as you all know, and hopefully aware by now. When we talk about policy and culture, it's the purpose of educating our community, our followers and listeners, the value and the benefit of being politically engaged, civically engaged, and the amount of power that that holds within our culture. But at the same time, reminding our community how powerful the culture is and how when we bridge that gap between policy and culture, there's immense potential in tapping into socioeconomic benefits and developments. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast and this media platform. And so we have another very special guest today who is the reflection of both of those, a newly elected official. So it's an honor to have that refreshing conversation and dialogue and just to tap into that energy. So we are blessed and honored to welcome 2nd District Nassau County Legislator, Miss Olena Nicks.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Yes, yes. And again, like, we're grateful for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's a whirlwind right now.
It's been, has it been a full 2 weeks? Maybe 2.5 weeks. So it is, I had the idea in mind that once I won this election, I'd hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And, this is a district that really needs a lot of support. And my predecessor, Sela, was amazing at it. And we want to just continue to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because we like to go into the journey of the individual.
Yeah.
But also I think it would be good because we were blessed to have your predecessor as one of our first guests, actually, the renowned now Senator Sela Bino, back when about a year ago at this point. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the 2nd District Legislator for Nassau County and what that kind of embodies in this region?
So, well, first it covers the area currently because there has been some change in the maps, but it covers the areas of all of Uniondale, all of Westbury and Newcastle, a small portion of like Hicksville, and some parts of Hempstead. So that role really focuses on, one, being able to support those communities as best as we can on the county side of things, so ensuring that we are acquiring funding. A big push for the Uniondale community has been making sure that East Garden City has not been listed in any of the county documents. And, Sela was a champion for that. That's something that we're looking to bring up again because it still continues to be an issue. So that's definitely a huge thing. And also ensuring that when we're looking at the budget on the county side, there are sometimes recommendations for budget cuts. And we understand that communities of color, a lot of which are in the 2nd District, there is a disparity with those cuts and that those communities feel it the most. So making sure that there is someone sitting there with enough oversight and enough understanding of their community to say, wait a second, this is going to affect my district more than it's going to affect any of you other districts.
Yeah.
And being the advocate and fighting to make sure that we're keeping those equitable services.
Yeah. And how many seats? Is it 18 in Nassau County?
19.
19.
Mm-hmm.
19. Kind of educate us a bit about the balance of power right now and how that works. So we know, obviously, Bruce Blakeman is the county executive,
Correct.
Republican. That's basically the executive branch.
Yes.
And then you have 19 seats in the county legislature.
Right, 12 of which are the Republicans, so they right now are in the majority, and 7 of which are in the minority of the Democrats.
And is that 12 a supermajority or is that a majority?
It's a majority.
It's a majority.
They every so often they will need us for a supermajority, which is why this upcoming election in November is going to be so important because we want to be able to pick up some seats and keep them, because if they pick up one extra seat, they need us for nothing then.
And what does that mean, though? What can they do? Again, like the power of that.
They can say no to all of the things, all of the requests that we're making, which currently we're seeing that happen.
Yeah.
But it means that there's no room for negotiation. So if there is ever something that comes up for them, like right now there is a $500 million bond that the county executive wants us to vote on. And if that ever, if they had the supermajority, they could just vote yes, they don't need us. But hopefully we're in some areas of negotiation and we'll see.
How'd you get into politics? I wanted to go back to the beginning. You said you was from Uniondale. Mm-hmm. How'd you get involved in politics and stuff like that?
So I've been advocating for the community since I was 14. My first job was at Planned Parenthood of Nassau County in Hempstead. And it was a grant-funded program throughout. I started in middle school, so throughout high school. And that's where we started to advocate for really comprehensive sex education, because schools like Uniondale were abstinence only, but we were still seeing high rates of STDs, pregnancies in teenagers. So the grant program really was for people like myself to speak to my peers about, protecting themselves, being safe, and letting them know what resources they had. In doing that work, I had the opportunity of going to Albany, going to DC, being able to lobby for just reproductive rights of women. And that's kind of where I got the feel for this is an area that I really like to do. I really loved being in the community. So I would say after high school, when I left that role, I then joined the fire department. So I've been in the fire department for 14 years. Again, boots on the ground within the community, as well as serving within the library as a trustee.
So you community for
Yeah,
real,
facts.
for real.
I
And you
am,
became
I
a
am.
chief, right?
Huh?
Okay.
Chief?
A captain.
A captain,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is something we was just talking to Councilman Kevin Riley about politics, civic engagement not really being like appealing into our
Right.
community, right? And we spoke about Sheila Bino, and I know her history.
Mm-hmm.
How influential was Sheila Bino into you? Coming up, was that someone you looked up to, being that you was involved with politics young? Was she somebody that kind of, laid it out for you?
Absolutely. To see a woman and to see someone that's representing our community so well, because the expectation, unfortunately, when women of color or just people of color go into these roles, the expectation is that they're going to squander it. And to see someone who excelled, Sela was amazing, and people liked her on both sides of the aisle. There's very few people who have a bad thing to say about her, and she really did her job. She cared and she poured everything into the district that she served. Yeah, so definitely an influence. And I reached out to her, throughout my race. I'm probably going to continue to reach out to her as I navigate my way through this district, and even thereafter, to see her go up to the Senate, to be the first Black representative of Long Island. It's just amazing. It's historic.
Nah, definitely. Shout out to Sheila Bino, man,
Yeah.
a legend, living legend. Westbury, man, we appreciate the work you've been doing and you continue to do in our community. So definitely shout out to her.
What you mentioned again getting involved at 14. I'm curious. No, politics is not easy.
No.
And there's a lot of at times bad energy, negativity, a lot of different things. Like what keeps your motor going on? Because as you said, you ran for library trustee. Were you on school board as well?
Not on the school board. So I currently sit on a policy committee for the school district, where we work on the policy that goes out for both students and
And that's
faculty.
Uniondale. So there's definitely an ingrained appetite and care,
Yeah.
passion for civic education. Why do you think, though, in your opinion, if you could go back to 2010, that era of high school, like why are the majority of young people not involved or seem to not care or interested?
That's a great question. I think, especially during our time, social media was up and coming, cell phones were out, and I think there was just more of an appeal to do other things. And when you're not really taught in high school the importance of civic engagement. It's the thing that just kind of goes by the wayside. But other communities, non-Black and brown communities, they understand the importance of civic engagement. They may not agree on everything, but they understand that if a building's coming, an apartment building's being built, whatever it is, they come together. They rally, they talk to, they have this thing called block captains, which I thought was the coolest thing. Out in Westbury, when I was campaigning, I learned they have block captains. And it's like this central communication. So I don't
You
think
said
it's
block captains?
So
Okay.
basically, there's one person who is responsible for putting out the news, putting out the information, making sure that the neighbors stay informed.
And this was in Westbury? That makes so much sense. We've been saying like Westbury has a different spirit.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
It's a real affluent Black community.
Yes.
The way that they operate in the school district, the people that work in the school district, and you could just ultimately see the processing of the students, particularly the young Black boys, is just very, very different. They came to our summit like every year, and you just see a very distinct
Sharp.
like
Yeah.
processing
Sharp,
with them.
yeah.
You could see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I think as great as Uniondale is, and Uniondale's given me a lot, which is why I always want to give back, there is always room for improvement. And I think just coming up when I was in high school, we didn't have that. We didn't have, a push for civic engagement or advocacy or any of those things. So, when you're leaving high school, you don't know what's available to you. And you also don't know the impact of how politics, as so many people say, they don't like to get involved in politics, but politics is everything down to a stop sign.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I think it's just more so like really breaking it down to our culture, the verbiage, so they really understand,
right.
what civic what civic engagement is. I don't think people really equate like a permit to politics. I don't think
Right.
people equate a stop sign or a crack in your street to politics. So I just think the verbiage to meet the culture in the middle, we gotta kind of like enhance that a little bit more so they
We do.
understand. I feel like.
We have to make it more appealing because even there are people with streets right now, their street lights are out and they don't know how to get them fixed. They don't know that they can call or go online, put in a request to get this fixed. But, we have to figure out ways to communicate because especially when we look at communities like Uniondale and Westbury and Newcastle, the communication methods are not the same. So everyone's not on social media. Everyone's not reading the newspaper. So one of the initiatives that, my office is going to be working on is doing some town halls, figuring out how people get information because often there is a lack of dissemination. So people don't know.
Yeah.
And then there's frustration because they feel like, well, it wasn't broadcast. We weren't told about it. We need to be able, that's not good enough. That means that we're not doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of, actually, first, I'm very, to touch about civic education, because that's actually the focus of policy and culture and definitely the central focus when it comes to programming for minority millennials. We're actually doing a program in Uniondale right now. It's called Civic Works. One of the biggest questions that always comes back to us is, well, it doesn't matter because whatever I vote, if I vote, it's still nothing changes. So I'm like, what do you have to say to that? Because we're still trying to process. We started to get some good examples of when you vote, why it matters. But I'm still trying to work on like tangible assets that can show to somebody this is why you need to be civically engaged and how this is gonna. And I'm speaking about the individual maybe that they don't see how it's helping their mother or grandmother or father or sister. Like it's still not processing to them about why this is so important to build a stronger voting bloc.
I think we have to start locally. And one of the examples that I always use, it's a little heartbreaking, is Laura Curran, who lost by a little over 1,000 votes. I'm sure we know 1,000 people, right? So those are tangible 1,000 people that either chose not to come out and vote, which we know that we had a lower voting amongst just communities of color that year who didn't come out to vote. So that's how close to home it is. And we could really be in a different predicament. The county can be if things would have went a different way.
But do you think the communities are feeling that? So this is what I mean.
Right.
And this is a real transparent question. If you don't have a job with the county and you don't run a youth program or something where like we have a program, we got almost all of our programs got cut for funding. Right. So if we weren't involved, I may not have felt or known that impact. So even somebody that didn't vote for Laura Curran or Bruce Blakeman, like what are they feeling right now with the Bruce Blakeman regime?
I could say that in Uniondale, we're seeing an increase in the homeless population. And part of that is because of the push to cut civil services and a cut in funding to a lot of our nonprofits that have critical teams that can go out and ensure that we're placing, finding shelter for these residents. So that I think is a great example of we're seeing an increase. We're seeing it's falling on deaf ears. Right, because now almost every part of the county, every department is controlled by someone that is closer within the Republican Party, who is not willing to work or doesn't really care about communities of color. So I would say certainly there. And then even when I think about in Hempstead, I remember, with Stop and Shop that was there. It's now, I think, Food Bazaar, maybe. It's something. I can't think of whatever it is, it's very expensive. And that's what all the residents keep saying. So if there was a representative that, again, once again, cared about communities of color, they would have thought, and had the foresight to maybe place something that was more affordable to the residents within Hempstead. Yeah.
Yeah, and that leads into, you're right now in the midst of a lot of different regional projects.
Yes.
A couple of billion-dollar developments. Now, you don't have to get too deep into all of it, but very curious about your perspective or thoughts as a legislator. Because when we actually talked to Celia about these projects, so you have offshore wind, clean energy. One of the pipelines would actually be coming down potentially through Uniondale. Massive resort. Cannabis is not so much of an impact anymore, but was still a big thing happening when legal cannabis retail stores within the community. Nassau has basically said no to all of it. And housing. So, these are some issues that is very hard as an elected official to balance. Of housing, you need to build more, but you don't want to become queensified.
Which we already are. And I love that you said that, because there are so many people who keep saying, well, we don't want to become the sixth borough, and, Long Island's becoming this. Well, every time a developer drives down and they see a small little plot of land, they go, we can put a building there. Yeah. They're going to build it regardless. Yeah. And they're working, really, because we're in the minority. They're working with our townships, so the town of Hempstead. They're getting the approval to build, and they're building either way. So we're seeing these apartment buildings that people keep saying that they don't want come up anyway. Yeah. And it feels like it's out of our control. And there's a lot of us that advocate either for or against it, but they're coming either way. And it has nothing to do with whether you're a Democrat or Republican. The developers are coming. We see Ingle Berman. Ingle Berman is a perfect example, who promised Uniondale that the apartments that he was going to bring that are now on Jerusalem were going to be affordable. There was going to be like this millennial blueprint, right? A 2-bedroom apartment there is like $4,000, and it's only like 800 square feet.
And they probably got one section, maybe 2 or 3 units that they're
what they say, like 10% were going to be
right. Yeah. But they were projecting more than that. And again, affordability doesn't necessarily mean low income.
Oh, no, I'm aware of that, yeah.
It also doesn't mean $4,000 for 850 square foot apartment.
By the AMI, right? Which I have a big beef with, because most of these developers, I do a lot of economic development work with IDAs, and so they'll say we're going to set aside 20% affordable at 120% AMI. Let's keep it real. 2-bedroom apartment at 120% AMI is $2,800.
Right.
And that's affordable. So there is...
Who?
Exactly.
Right.
But the crazy part is the market itself would fix itself if there weren't people renting and buying homes at this price. So that's the crazy part.
Yes.
But we were talking about this earlier, to who? It's not to traditional working class Long Islanders.
Correct. It's for people who now, after post-pandemic, working from home, don't have to go in the city, tired of the commute. And now they want to stay on Long Island. So they want the city feels, I guess, but want to live in suburbia, right? And that's what we're seeing. But, the Uniondale community, we also have a land trust, which we just launched our second project. The lottery closed for it. We're going to be doing the drawing for it. But that is what we think when we envision affordability. So it is, I believe, 80% AMI. The person who gets picked to get this house in perpetuity, the land trust owns the land, and the buyer will own the house. So now you're getting a house at almost half the cost. So if the house was for $600,000, you might be getting it for $300,000, and then your mortgage will never be more than 30% of what your income is.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Shout out to the land trust. Yeah. What's the Toll Brothers' name that's there?
Paul Gibson.
And the lady that runs it.
Janine Maynard.
Janine, yeah, they're good people.
Yeah. They are.
We need more people like that. That's another problem.
Well, that's another board that I sit on. So, and you know what? It's funny because Paul, Janine, myself, and a couple of other members that sit on that board, we sit on a lot of the other boards, and we're like, we need more people. We need more representation. We need our Latino community, because that's what Uniondale is. We're starting to see a larger Latino population, a larger Haitian Creole population. So we're also trying to figure out ways of how to get them more involved, how to get them to build into community, because that's how you become civically strong. When people care about the communities they live in, and they start to kind of put the pain and the work in there, we see stronger civically engaged communities, and those communities advocate for with their elected officials and hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Long Island is changing rapidly every day, like Dan said, right? We seeing changes, all the way across the board. And, we have Matty Irish on here. He's like a big contractor and developer.
Yeah, I love Matty.
Yeah, that's my guy, right? So
Yeah, he'll get yelled at you. He's not a contractor or developer.
what is it?
He's with the building and trades.
All right, the building and trade, right? So we were speaking to him in innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the area that we in, it's like you getting pushed back for wanting to build a apartment complex or whatever the case may be, right? How much and how important is innovation in your position right now with all of the projects that we're trying to bring out here from Long Island? I go to the Sands meeting, vote yes to Sands, and I hear the pushback.
Right.
So I only can imagine what you guys are getting. Like, how important is innovation in these situations right here?
We have to start thinking, and it's huge, because we have to start thinking about the future. We have to start thinking about the future of people. What we've seen, I think, over the last 3 years is New York keeps seeing this mass exodus. People are leaving the state, especially Long Island, because what do everyone say? It's too expensive to live here. So we now have to think outside of the box, and we have to take a page out of like Boston and North Carolina, who are pulling in large millennial populations because they're doing something different. And one of the, I don't know if you guys are familiar, if you ever go down like 7th Street in Garden City, they have that model slightly, where they have their buildings, their businesses kind of on the lower level, and then they have apartments on the top level. And they're downtown. They do have a couple apartments or condos if people want to own.
So it's like a mixed use thing.
It is. We need those kind of mixed use occupancies, because that's what's creating walkable communities. So you can walk out your apartment, you can go work out. There's places to work out, to go eat, to see a dentist. All of those things are central in one area. It's creating third spaces, because, as you know, our generation is starting to become lonelier and more siloed. It'll solve a lot of the issues that we're seeing now, especially post-pandemic. But there are so many people who push back because they feel like there's going to be this overpopulation issue, and really all it does is take planning. We have to do the surveys. We're not going to just pop a building and say, well, here it is. No, we'll do the research. We'll do the surveys. We'll see what the impact it will have on the communities and go from there. But innovation it's huge, because we have to think out of the box. We can't keep doing the same thing.
Do you think it's going to be difficult to get, you're a millennial, obviously,
I am.
yeah, right? Yeah. To get more millennial, and now Gen Z, I mean, we're getting
Right.
older as millennial, to run and win on Long Island?
Yes.
Yeah.
Long Island has a very different playbook than it does in the city. Well, not
It is.
politics.
It is.
It's
it
very
is.
different
It is.
Very.
than it is in the city.
Yeah.
Long Island is a more moderate place, no matter which side you sit on. Most
Purple
people,
rain.
Yes.
It's definitely purple. It's
very,
definitely
very purple. So we also have to think politically what that looks like for us here, because we can't use what they're using in the city. We can't use what they're even using in the Midwest, where they're flipping seats with their youth, youth and Gen Z. They're doing it in other states, and we're admiring, and like, wow, we really wish we could do that here. But it's hard because you can't. So we have to figure out what's going to work here. And honestly, I don't have a solution right this moment, but we'll see. I think hopefully as more youth see people like me sitting in office and assuming these seats and taking on a role like you, and I know you're working with Michaela and her getting that push for more youth, I think as that starts to happen, they'll feel more encouraged to get involved, But we have to make people feel that they are a part of this and that this is also their legacy as well.
And you're not always going to win on the first campaign, right? Like
Right.
you have been.
I ran 2 races before this.
Yeah. Which ones did you run again?
First race was for town clerk, and
Okay.
the second race was for town
And it's not easy.
supervisor. Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Not at all.
After any of those campaigns, did you feel like this is not for me anymore?
Never.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because because for me, the biggest thing was, again, it was about the work that I was doing within the community, and that's always the focus for me. So would I love to have done it on a higher level? Was I disappointed? Absolutely, I was. But I never stopped doing the work. You know, I didn't quit and say, you know what, I've had enough of this. And I think anyone who does that, I kind of like tilt my head to, because what was, you know, were you running to win, or were you running to improve the lives of others?
Yeah, it shouldn't just.
Right.
Those is the elected officials versus the public servants.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any? Are you the youngest on the Nassau County Ledge right now?
Right now I am.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Being
Very
And a
cool.
sister.
Yeah.
and it's crazy you said that, Dan. Being the youngest sister on the ledge, being involved in politics, being in this leadership position, right? We speak to guys all the time on how important it was. I spoke to you about how important Sealer was to you, right? I'm noticing a shift in the demographic with females. We run a program called Boulder Mac Park. It's a basketball tournament, so we in the park 7 days a week over the summer, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon all the way to 10 o'clock at night. So we're just seeing different, you know, just different age brackets.
Right.
We seeing the young kids that's just coming up there excited to play. We're seeing the young kids that's just coming up there looking for trouble. We're seeing the kids that's actually coming up there to play basketball. But with the females now, it's like a extra aggression that I'm noticing, where it's like the emergence of like a female gangster. I never really knew that was like an option. Then like I feel like the music is like capturing, you know, the females right now. Like we got like some major artists that kind of, you know, headline the things. The Nicki
portray
Minaj,
that,
the Cardi B's, the Meg Thee Stallions. Right now with that demographic being
Glorilla.
Glorilla too. that demographic being so aggressive, social media being this way, like how do we keep the Seal of Vinyls? How do we keep the Vanessa Streeters? How do we keep this legacy lasting amongst that?
And I'm glad you asked that question, because there are days that, especially through campaigning and politicking, I guess, that I have to say to myself that I'm still allowed to be soft. You know, I'm allowed to command respect and be soft and not be aggressive. And it's all about the wording that you choose. And I've seen, like, you know, I see it all the time with the social media with, I guess there's like the baddies show. So like that's like a huge thing that young girls are watching, and they're like so drawn to it. I think we have to continue to make sure that there are role models within the community that are realistic, because what we're seeing on social media is not realistic. What they're seeing in front of them locally is realistic. So ensuring, I guess, with your basketball club, that you're bringing in women who, you know, can be multifaceted, but still they don't need to have the aggression there, right? You can play and dominate in a sport and still be you, and still be a soft woman, if that's your preference.
But that's an interesting. Now I don't want to get in trouble here. Like this is not really my realm. But we have these conversations off the podcast in general, because I have 5 sisters, by the way.
Yeah, we not beef on no lady.
No. That's what I'm saying. I'm not about to get like too crazy. But I got 5 older sisters, all sisters,
all
right?
sisters.
So some are like very successful. I'm talking about principals, superintendents, doctors, and others like straight went to the streets. And it's very interesting to me to see what's happening right now. But in general, how can I say this, right? So some of my sisters that are successful are also like very strong to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? So at times, I don't even see the feminine energy anymore.
Yeah,
and I'm curious, you're saying soft energy. Is that the same as feminine energy?
I don't want to say that.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to be. I don't know. I don't even want to get into
I don't
why.
want to say that.
But I'm noticing why you like you said soft energy.
There's this right. There's just a delicate. We don't have to be what the perceived, because historically men, right? There is this patriarchy, and if you don't exude that, then you don't get listened to. But what I'm saying is that we can still be women, and traits that are, I guess, not biologically natural to us, we can still use our natural soft traits to command respect, to get work done. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying softness and femininity is, hand in hand, the same thing.
Interesting.
But do you even think communicating in a soft form will even make the conversation a little bit better? I feel like, because it's like, say a female is addressing a guy and it's more in an aggressive form, that's like knocking a guy kind of off balance. I don't know if I need to address you as a woman. I don't know if I need to handle you as a dude. I don't know, how do I?
I think that's a crazy thought.
No, but I'm saying,
that's reality,
you
right?
got to think, if you're communicating in this way, like you said, I want to communicate as a soft woman. But if you're communicating with me as you one of the fellas, how am I supposed to communicate back?
But I think
you know what it is. I think that in any case, whether it's two men that are talking, two women that are talking, the aggression, someone's going to shut down. People don't like to be talked to aggressively.
Right.
And that's not necessary. And I think we as people just need to formulate our words better, formulate our arguments a bit stronger. That's what's going to win us. The yelling means absolutely nothing. The getting aggressive means nothing if your argument is emptyless.
But what I'm saying is you even said it all right, when you think of a man, you think of something more macho, right? Something more forward and aggressive.
Right.
So when you think of a woman, I don't want to say you want to think of her as less reserved, but the communication aspect, like you said, you want to communicate soft, right? So if a female's communicating outside of soft, you feel me? Outside of soft, I don't really even want to get into it on the camera. How can I how am I supposed to handle this? How is that dialogue supposed to be?
However you were taught to treat a woman.
That's a problem.
But
though,
see,
in a lot
I feel
of
like
situations.
that's so I'm supposed to just and I don't disrespect females. I got sisters. I got nieces.
They're gonna get on you for keep saying females.
I was about to say, you gotta be careful. You're supposed to say women.
Right,
I'd be safe. That's what I'm saying. Sisters. It's tough, yo.
Pardon me.
I'm looking at the story. One time in the car, right? And I'm not gonna name who they are. They're very well known. And I was arguing with somebody. And he's like, yo, where you at? Where you at? I'm like, yo, I want a bunch of females right now. They all looked at me like, what? What did you? You can't say that.
So, all right. Now, I know I can't refer to a female as a female. Now. I never knew that.
You know why? Let me try. This is what they told me. I don't know if you tell me if I'm wrong. When you're saying male or female, especially females, that's more of the animalistic definition of who they are.
Right.
It's a woman is or
a lady.
A lady.
Understand.
If you're talking about a black woman, I like to just keep it simple and say a sister, because everyone understands what that means, and I feel like there's respect with that.
Yeah.
Depending on the way you say it. But when you say a female, it's more just the carnal, animalistic definition of a woman.
Right, because any
Anybody
animal
could,
or species can be a female.
I never knew that. I never knew that.
Now I got yelled at for that. So that's why
I never knew
I heard you say, I'm like, yo, he go.
I know, he must have said it 7 times. I'm like, oh man,
See,
they're
I
gonna
know
get
some
it.
of that. But to my point is right, you said how you was taught to treat a woman, right? I was taught yo, you don't put your hands on women, you don't disrespect women. But at the same time, if we having a dialogue and you're conversing with me as if you're a grown bodybuilder, how do we engage in a dialogue at that point?
But you just, I'll cut you off real quick.
Go ahead.
You just had a situation. You handled it very well. You can answer that question yourself.
I mean, but at the end of the day, I handled that. I avoided the circus.
And that's what you should do.
But why, if we human beings, why do we gotta conform in a situation like that and we're equal? We always have this argument, nah, you're not bigger than me as a man, we equal. So why is it that I have to conform when you're coming at me crazy? And I conform because I know better than to argue with a girl. This is what I be saying. Pardon me, a woman. I know better than to argue with a woman. So me even engaging in that would have created a scene. So I just just de-escalated the argument and kind of like just went on about my business. I really didn't even engage into what she was saying.
You know, there's a saying that, you know, when you start arguing with an idiot on the outside, no one can tell who the idiot actually is. So walking away is the right thing. And that's because some people don't have enough couth to calm it down and bring it to a level which you are. But you know you have that. So
And you was trying to get me to jump out the
that's
window.
what I'm saying.
He was trying
like,
to get me to
I'm
jump out
sitting
the
there like, yo,
window.
don't let her disrespect you.
oh my God.
And I'm like, you know what? You were right. I woke up in the morning like, yo, you were right.
You let it go. Like, what does it matter?
I was definitely
right?
wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's ego, right? Like, that's
Right.
ego. And like, yo,
Right.
don't let her win the argument. And I'm like,
Right. I mean, and it happens to all of us. We're human beings, right? You know, I'm sure there's going to be days on the dais that someone says something and I'm going to like want to flip out. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't take anything personal. And that's why I try and tell everybody else. Most of the time, what people have going on, it's what they have going on with themselves. It has nothing to do with me. So.
now, though, on Long Island, I'm curious of your thoughts about this. When we speak of power, in my opinion, sisters have been able to figure out how to not only attain power, but wield it a lot better, specifically than black men. I feel like
Okay.
we have this conversation a lot too.
Okay.
In that, and I don't want to get in trouble for this. In that journey,
I hope you guys don't get me canceled.
you're not gonna get
I
canceled.
need to get reelected, guys.
No, this is it.
I'm joking. I'm kidding.
In the journey to, I mean, you're answering every question authentically to yourself. To power, though, do you feel like there's sometimes been a misplacement of that soft energy overall? What I mean by that is, I do feel like it's very difficult for brothers to climb the ladder in very different industries across Long Island. There's a handful in executive positions, elected positions. It's we're getting a little more, I would say. But
I guess the first question would be, are they motivated and what work are they doing?
see, like, you know what you're doing. Like, that's a good response. I mean, that's something we were just talking about, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know if the ambition is there, the motivation is there.
And that's the question.
But why? Is it
Why is it not there?
I do feel like at times there could be a lot of silent missiles shot, and you just tap out. Like, I can't do it. It's too hard.
I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that one.
Fair enough. I don't know. Makes sense.
But I mean, that's a good something to focus on, especially because our office does interns. So if we can focus on
internship is a great gateway.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. On a policy level now, what are some of the focuses for this cycle that you have left? You have about 8 months left, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things is going to be, we're going to continue to talk about housing. We're going to continue to try and find ways that we can get funding, find ways that we can redefine or reimagine housing, because a lot of millennials and Gen Zers they may not want the traditional house. And I think we're seeing a lot of that as well. You know, there's the thing called house poor. You buy a house, but people don't tell you about all the rest of the things that come with buying a house, you know, that you're now the person that maintains it, etc. So there are a lot of millennials and Gen Zers who don't actually want a house. They want to own, which is great. And there are other avenues. There are condos, co-ops, things like that. So, you know, we want to start that conversation. We want to get the conversation going of the scarcity and deficits that there is when it comes to housing. So that's going to always be a huge focus. The other thing is going to ensure that we are maintaining the civil services. The social services that are in place. Again, addressing the homelessness issue, and making sure that our nonprofits who have been working and a lot of the places that have been getting funded continue to be funded, and that they don't see those shortages. Because, what we're seeing is right now the Safe Center of Long Island is
Shutting
closing
down.
down.
Yeah.
And that has been so integral in the community for the safety of both children and victims. So now without that, what happens? We want to make sure that that funding is in place. We want to make sure that like Family and Children's Association gets the funding that they need. You know, that's going to be a huge focus, making sure that our social services are still there. Another thing is working with Department of Social Services, because at the same time, what we're seeing is a disparity in the amount of housing shelters within communities of color. So where you have, I would say, 30 of them between Hempstead, Uniondale, Roosevelt, and maybe one in Rockville Center, we can't take on anymore.
Yeah, a lot.
These communities cannot take on anymore, So that, I would say that. And again, just making sure that we're working with our school districts to let them know what resources are available, and overall public safety. So we want to make sure that our fire departments are funded, that our police departments are funded, because, one of the things that has been brought to my attention is the corrections department. So they have been working, a lot of them, 16, 20-hour shifts. They're low on their numbers right now, so we need to try and get some more classes in.
Low on their numbers for what, employees?
Employees, yeah, so that's why they're working so many hours.
Well, listen, we have a career fair coming up. Would love if we could make a connection to whoever
Yeah.
their team is to show up. We have almost 800 students coming to the
Right.
summit. And
Did you invite her to the summit and the pre-reception and everything?
did not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But would love to have you there. It's
Okay.
Wednesday, April 9th
Alrighty.
at Nassau Coliseum.
Awesome.
The VIP lounge is the pre-reception.
Okay.
And then the summit. If you're available, actually, we're doing a civic education conversation. I think it
Okay.
would be great. We have Chris Alexander, who's the executive director of NAACP now. He used to be the director of Office of Cannabis
Yeah.
Management. One of the panelists. We're trying to book a
Awesome.
few other guests. So if you're available, I think that would be a great.
Let's check the calendar and hopefully.
I know it's probably crazy now, but Uniondale will be in the
But,
building and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So
They
yeah.
band will be there too. They got a battle of the bands with Uniondale.
Oh, that's
Uniondale
nice.
got
That's
a good band.
exciting.
So they gonna
Yeah.
battle it out with Wine Dance, Wine Dance High School band.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, but no, we can definitely make the connection with the corrections and their union, because they have a great union, and they are trying to make sure that they get classes in because they want to give their guys some
Okay.
relief.
Good to know.
It'll be exciting, and I think hopefully in a couple of months, I would say less than a couple of months, I'll have a meeting with Commissioner Ryder and talk about some of the concerns that they have on the police side of things and where they sit. So, public safety is going to be a huge thing, because there is a misnomer that communities of color don't want police, that we're trying to defund police, that Democrats are trying to defund police, and I think everybody wants safety. So that narrative, we've got to kick that narrative out the door.
Yeah. And after is it before November or after November where your district is going to switch?
After November. So it'll be the November election. You'll be voting for the new district, but the new district goes into effect January 1st of 2026.
So then how would that work? Do you have to run again
I have to run again this year, yeah.
in November? But you're running for the new district or
I'm running for the new
the new
district.
district, which would be District
District 5. So
5,
that
okay.
new district will encompass most of Uniondale, most of Hempstead, a small portion of West Hempstead, and a small portion of Franklin Square.
Got it. Understood. All right. Well, and wrapping up, again, Noel, you're super busy, and we're very grateful for your time and appreciative of it. 2 questions for you. I am actually very curious of your thoughts on the county executive race. It's going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting. I'm very excited about it. Seth is a good friend of mine, so of course I'm rooting for him all the way. And I think that, from what it sounds like, the pulse is that people are tired of the performative.
Well, you mentioned Laura Curran. You also mentioned Laura Gillen in town of Hempstead.
Yeah.
Very similar climate right now.
Yeah. So we're
With that
hoping
race,
that
so you never
we see
know.
a repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be interesting. And then, so if there's a young girl right now that is graduating and very passionate about civic engagement or wants to solve a problem, maybe has a pain point that's bothering
Right.
her, or, really interested in politics, doesn't fully understand it, but wants to get one foot in, one foot out, and just really take that next step. What's some words of advice that you can give her? And not just a young girl, but again, like just being that representation
Right.
for the sisters, but any young person right now.
Right. I would say that there are so many resources out there, and reach out to your elected officials. Reach out to, and it doesn't even have to be your elected official, right? It could be someone that you look up to. Reach out to the people that you look up to. It could be your places of worship. It could be anything. The resources are there. Someone knows someone that can get that person connected, and show them the ropes. And that's really what we need. That's what community is being able to get people to where they need to go.
Someone knows someone, especially on that bridge between policy and culture. So again, thank you, newly elected Nassau County 2nd District Legislator, Olena Nicks.
Thank you so much for
Thank you for
having me.
having us.